We all know that Five Nights at Freddy's has some confusing and seemingly contradictory lore, one of the largest and longest parts of it being the history of the Afton family. And today, I'm finally going to solve some of the biggest mysteries about it, including the timeline of the family deaths. Well, try to. At this point, we're all pretty sure that William Afton is the purple guy, the never-dying rabbit, the man behind the slaughter. We're fairly certain that her daughter Elizabeth was scooped up by Circus Baby and went on to possess her, then turning into Ennard and then turning into Scrap Baby and then melting down. We're pretty sure that his older son, Michael, was the protagonist of most FNAF games, but was also scooped out by Ennard, piloted like a flesh Gundam, and then possessed himself to come back to life. And we're pretty certain that his youngest son, the crying child, is the bite victim of 1983 and possibly goes on to possess Fredbear, or as we know him, Golden Freddy. The main problem, besides the fact that most of it is still technically speculative even though we have a lot of evidence, is that we don't know the timeline of these events. Now, I hear you. Right, this all happened like 50 years ago in the timeline. Does it really affect the canon that much? Can we just agree that this all happened around this time and move on? Well, no. It would help us figure out a lot of stuff actually, like the motivations of William Afton to start this whole mess, some of the more cryptic minigames like Midnight Motorist, and if the crying child's soul indeed goes into Golden Freddy. So Slices, put on your aprons and let's bake ourselves a theory. First, let's gather our ingredients. We have to recover everything we know about the Afton family. We've been taking a lot of information for granted as confirmed where there's actually speculation involved. We need to build a pretty firm foundation before we can jump to our conclusions. So what do we know for sure? Well, we know about William Afton. Granted, the name was first stated in the Silver Eyes books. No, I haven't read them yet, I just do good research. Anyway, it was practically later confirmed in Sister Location when he was referred to as Mr. Afton. Then in the 6th game, Freddy Fazbear Pizzeria Simulator, it was hard confirmed when the voice actor who voiced him was credited as William Afton. Already? But they love you. They'll never know they're famous. We also know that he has to be the purple guy from the earlier cutscenes of child murder. In FNAF 3, we see a series of cutscenes of a purple guy dismantling the old animatronics, getting cornered by the spirits he killed, attempt to use the spring-locked suit to scare them off, and die in it. Springtrap, the character that becomes of that, is explicitly stated to be the father of the character we assume to be Michael Afton, and then is later further linked to Scraptrap as William Afton, thanks to the FNAF 6 credits. This then doubles and triples down in FNAF Help Wanted and FNAF Security Breach. Finally, we know that he used the spring Bonnie suit to kill them. Not only does he think it would help him in his time of need in that cutscene, but we see him directly use it to try to lure a girl away in the Fruity Maze secret ending. So strictly speaking, with confirmed evidence, William Afton killed several children and stuffed them into animatronic suits. William Afton created the Funtime animatronics with the explicit goal to be able to kidnap children. He eventually dies and becomes Springtrap, and honestly, from that point on, it's fairly easy to follow the breadcrumbs. He burns, comes back twice, recombines, and then gets blobbed. So that's all the info on William. What about his son, Michael? We admittedly have a lot less information on Michael. We do get confirmation of his name at the end of the very hard mode of Sister Location, through this cutscene.
Father, it's me, Michael.
He then confirms that he's the person we play as in Sister Location, which therefore confirms a lot of other things. He's the person who gets scooped, he's the person who gets piloted by Ennard, and he's the person who gets self-resurrected as a walking flesh bag. Furthermore, we can speculate with a lot of evidence, but I do stress speculate, this is not confirmed, that Michael is the protagonist in FNAF 1, the Custom Night in FNAF 2, FNAF 3, possibly the Dreamer in FNAF 4, FNAF's Sister Location, and Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator. In video game release order, the evidence for those claims are: FNAF 1 and 2 has firing notices for foul odor. This could be interpreted as a nod to the fact that he is a rotting corpse. For FNAF 3, the way Springtrap looks at you in the jump scare could imply that he's confused on why he sees his own son. The selection of hallucinations makes the most sense for Michael to have been the one to see those specific animatronics, and the cutscene we get at the end of Sister Location's very hard mode that tells us the name of Michael shows the FNAF 3 location, and Springtrap getting up after the fire. FNAF 4 is a lot more debatable. I personally think that we play as Michael having nightmares, possibly during sister location. After all, we'd be in the house that the nightmares are taking place. A few of the animatronics have mouths on their stomach, which mimics the scooping capability of some of the fun times, and most prudently, there's a piece of merchandise called the security logbook, and it's shown that Michael was possibly the one who owned this last, so most of the writings in it are from Michael Afton. If we were to infer that, there's a drawing of Nightmare Fredbear. No one else would have seen this except for him, or at least he and his younger brother had the same nightmares. Regardless, he saw that animatronic somehow. In sister location, he pretty much directly states that it was him and shows us through that cutscene I mentioned earlier. And in Freddy Fazbear Pizzeria Simulator, several times when you're jump scared, the animatronic who killed you will say something. A lot of those allude to the fact that you're Michael. Furthermore, in Henry's speech, he mentions,
"And to you, my brave volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you. Although there was a way out planned for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling that you are right where you want to be."
Implying that he wants to be here to finish it off too, as he doesn't think he should be alive anyway. There's one more piece of evidence around this guy, but it's more speculative, so I saved it for last. And that's Foxy Bro. In the FNAF 4 cutscenes, we see a teenager who wears a Foxy mask tormenting the crying child in the days leading up to his death. For a while, we weren't exactly sure who this was, but due to some merchandise calling him the brother, it seems as though these two characters are brothers, implying that this has to be Michael Afton. Speaking of that crying child, what do we know about him? Well, for my sanity's sake, and like a good chunk of the community agrees, his name is probably Evan. Let me be frank with y'all. The evidence used to find the name Evan is speculative at best. It really doesn't prove anything and wouldn't hold up against any of the evidence we have. But if we get his name wrong, it really doesn't affect the lore in any way. So we might as well just use it, because it doesn't affect anything. It just makes it easier to refer to him. At least, there's no harm in calling him Evan versus calling him the Crying Child or BV83 or whatever you want to call him. So, for me, Evan he will be. We know very little about Evan Afton. All we really know for certain is that for some reason, he is terrified of Fazbear animatronics, and he gets killed from a bite from Fredbear. Furthermore, his best friend is the Fredbear plush, and he is shown a few times post-mortem being talked to and being promised to be put back together. As far as speculation goes, we can speculate that he is currently possessed or trapped within the Golden Freddy or Fredbear suit, as it was the suit that actually killed him, and if we are to assume that Michael is the protagonist of FNAF 1, It's Me goes flashing crazy when Golden Freddy arrives. This could be Evan's way of reaching out to his older brother. Finally, it can be speculated the spirit we're trying to help pass in the Happiest Day minigames of FNAF 3 is Evan Afton. Again, no confirmation, it can be speculated. With that, there's one pertinent family member left, Elizabeth Afton. What do we know about her? First off, the name gets confirmed in FNAF 6. As you can see, there's a lot of lore in FNAF 6. We'll be back there soon. At the beginning of Henry's speech, he cuts off Scrap Baby by saying,
"Connection terminated. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Elizabeth. If you still even remember that name."
This implies that Scrap Baby's old name when she was alive was Elizabeth. We know Scrap Baby formed of Circus Baby, and we know Circus Baby killed this blonde child. So we assume that this blonde child is Elizabeth Afton. Why do we assume she's an Afton? Well, a small girl gets heard several times in sister location, asking,
"Daddy, why won't you let me play with her?"
If she's asking permission to play with Circus Baby, it could be implied that the person she's asking permission from is William Afton. Even more, although technically surface level, evidence is the fact that the game is called Sister Location, and Michael is said to have been sent by William to find her, his sister's location. We even get a retelling of that account from Circus Baby, and we get shown it in that minigame. Further evidence that she goes on to possess Circus Baby, in this minigame, Circus Baby's eyes are blue and Elizabeth's are green. However, every time we see Circus Baby with her eyes lit up after that, they're green. If the eye color changed, this could lead us to believe a possession occurred. So that's all the important Afton family members. There's a Mrs. Afton, but we don't have any information on her, frankly. What are the other events crucial to understanding the story here? Well, there's two more. The Emilys, and the two missing children incidences. Henry Emily, whose name was first teased by a cassette label HRY223, then later accidentally confirmed by a voice actor to be Henry, seemingly linking him to Henry Emily like in the novels, just as we have William Afton in the novels, is the co-creator of Fazbear Entertainment, and is thought to be the original genius behind... Would you like to join us? And is thought to be the original genius behind the original animatronics, the toy animatronics, and the marionette. He has a daughter named Charlotte, sometimes being shortened to Charlie, who William kills and then goes on to possess the puppet. We see all this through several minigames. First, we see the kill occur during the FNAF 2 minigame. We then see the repercussions of that in the security puppet minigame. As the marionette, she was the one responsible for leading the souls into their animatronic suits. We see this through the minigames of FNAF 2, FNAF 3, FNAF 6, and the speech at the end of FNAF 6. And finally, the original 5. In the newspaper clippings of FNAF 1, we know that William Afton killed 5 children in the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza before the opening of the FNAF 2 location. I want to make something very clear because it was misunderstood on my last video, perhaps I misspoke. When I say the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location, I'm not referring to the FNAF 1 location. I know this can get confusing sometimes because of the repeated names of a lot of things, but the basic timeline is Fredbear's Family Diner opens, fight happens, closes. Then, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza opens with the original 4 animatronics. Then either it closes or the FNAF 2 location opens with the toy animatronics. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza closes down, then it's just the FNAF 2 location, then it closes as well in the hopes that they can revitalize the brand later. Later on, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the same name as the older restaurant, opens, and that is the FNAF 1 location. It's a bit confusing, but technically the games would happen FNAF 2, then FNAF 1. Anyway, back to the theory. As the FNAF 2 minigames show us, these souls are eventually led into the old Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and Golden Freddy animatronics. We also see that in the FNAF 3 minigames, they work together to help Evan Afton move on, giving him the birthday party he deserved. At last, their souls can move on. There's also hints to a second missing children incident, as we see in the minigame, Save Them. I go more into this in my last video, but basically, there's 2 minigames of FNAF 2 that show us 5 bodies in 2 locations. Go 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 shows us 5 bodies in the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location, and Save Them shows us 5 bodies in the FNAF 2 location. This implies that 5 children were killed in 2 separate instances, leading to 2 missing children incidences. Oh, my cats don't love me today. What's more, in the phone calls of FNAF 2, on night 5, we hear that there's some rumors going around that something happened, but don't be too alarmed. And then night 6, we immediately get told that there's an investigation, we shouldn't be there, they deny wrongdoing, and these things happen sometime. So, it seems like there was a missing children incident. Not to mention, he specifically states that a yellow suit was used. It's probably Willie. There's more to most of these characters, but today we're talking about the beginning of the franchise, so we can leave it where we are for now. So what events do we have? Evan Afton being bitten in 1983 and soon dying, Elizabeth Afton being scooped by Circus Baby and going on to possess her, Michael Afton being scooped by Ennard, ejected, and then possessing himself, William Afton getting spring-locked, and then eventually becoming Springtrap, Charlotte Emily being killed by William Afton outside a pizzeria and then possessing the marionette, and the first and second missing child incidences. All we have to do now is figure out the order. So let's mix our ingredients. Now, I hear a few of you asking, why does the order matter? Well, for me personally, it helps us better understand the motivations behind William Afton as a character. For example, if Elizabeth or Charlotte dies first, it could explain why Evan is terrified of the animatronics. But if that's the case, why would William have killed Charlotte or built the fun times that accidentally killed Elizabeth? Things like that can confusing. More than that, if we figure out the order, it could help us understand minigames that so far have no clear answer, like Midnight Motorist. A few necessary constants that we can figure out right away. William Afton has to be spring-locked after both of the missing children incidences. Additionally, Elizabeth, Evan, and Charlotte all have to happen before the spring lock. The only one that might be able to happen after it is Michael Afton, because it's somewhat separate from William's direct actions. So Michael Afton could be scooped after the spring lock, but everything else has to happen before. For now, we'll put William at number 6, possibly 7, once we figure out where Michael goes. What else do we know? Well, we know that Elizabeth has to die before Sister Location, as she's already possessing Circus Baby when we get there. So in that way, Elizabeth happens before Michael. We also know that Evan dies before Michael, because if Michael Afton is truly Foxy Bro, we see him alive and well during the cutscene where Evan dies. Well might be a strong word. We see him alive, so put them behind Mike as well. Now that's all we know for certain. To truly figure this out, we're going to have to start speculating and using logic instead of just evidence to figure it out. So let's try a few different recipes. What if the missing children incidences are first? Immediately one problem rises from this. Why? Killing like 10, maybe 11 kids isn't just something you do because you were feeling goofy that day. It's not just a quirky little thing you do sometimes. We need a big reason for that to happen. So I hesitate to put them first. What happens if Charlotte is the first to die? Frankly, that doesn't make a lot of sense either. I know that in FNAF 6, Henry states a wound first inflicted on me, but I think he's referring to William killing, not just death in general. This is because of Security Puppet. Henry made Security Puppet to guard children and especially his own daughter. Why would he have done that if William hasn't killed any kids previously? Or at least shown the inclination to kill kids? It would make a lot of sense if the Security Puppet was built in response to a missing children incident. Although we don't know, and he does say first inflicted, so we'll keep that foggy for now. It's a possibility. What if Elizabeth was the first death? Now, this is possible as she seems completely innocent of the dangers of animatronics, something that wouldn't make much sense if Evan already died. However, there's a problem with that as well. William built the Funtimes to kidnap or kill children. Again, why would he do that with no reason? We can speculate that he's always wanted to do this to be able to experiment on Remnant, but we don't know. That's huge speculation. Okay, but what if Evan dies first? Well, the only problem that arises this way is we don't have a reason for Evan to be scared of the animatronics. More specifically, when he's frightened, the Fredbear plush says, "You know what happens when he finds you." Now, this could mean Foxy Bro, but Foxy Bro already left. Presumably, we're talking about animatronics or workers at the restaurant. What happens? What does he know? This could be explained away from the mind of a child being illogical and afraid of things. I mean, there's real life kids afraid of Chuck E. Cheese animatronics for no reason. Totally not me. I wasn't afraid of him. Yeah. So those are the possible different arrangements. There's also one more possible starting event for the franchise. Someone at home pressing the subscribe button to help out my channel. Okay, that was cheesy, I know, sorry. Let's take the recipe with the least amount of problems so far, Evan dying first, pop it in the oven, and see what theory bakes out. Evan Afton, terrified of the animatronics due to a childish fear, possibly after seeing a worker step inside a Springlock suit, is constantly tormented by his brother Michael for his silly aversion to them. However, one day the teasing goes too far, and Evan is killed in a prank pulled by Michael and his friends. Michael, enraptured by guilt, spends most of his time in his room from then on. Evan is buried in the woods, and the Fredbear and Bonnie Springlock suits are tucked away due to the bad PR, being replaced instead by Freddy, Chica, Bonnie, and Foxy at the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. William starts to drink, but notices the Fredbear suit twitching occasionally, as if it were haunted. Curious to see if it was, and in the hopes that he may be able to bring his son back, he recreates it to experiment. He creates the Funtimes and Circus Baby's Party and Rental. Its express purpose? Recreate the Bite of 83, but in a faster and more discreet manner, in attempt to further study this effect. However, the worst case scenario happened. After several warnings given, Elizabeth still gets too close to Circus Baby and becomes the victim. William falls even more into himself, drinks excessively, becomes easily agitated. Elizabeth stays in Circus Baby, but William does notice the eye color change. He was right. He needed to do more experimenting. He needed more children. However, around that time, Henry could see the mess that William was becoming and wanted to keep him away from anyone he could hurt. He creates the Security Puppet out of the marionette to help accomplish this. Furious at Henry for impeding him and having a seemingly perfect family, William does the unthinkable to try and bypass him. We see in Security Puppet and Take Care to the Children, Afton finds a moment where the security is lax, and Charlotte is left alone and left outside. He kills her. She goes to possess the marionette as it chased her down. Henry is distraught and pretty much disappears from the narrative until much later. As William heads home from that night, he goes to check on Michael as he always does. His wife, distant and removed, says to just leave him alone. William refuses, slamming on the door for it to be opened to no avail. He goes to the window, seeing it broken, and footprints running off to that place. Alright, step back for a second. Why would that be what Midnight Motorist is about? After all, that's not purple, that's yellow. Here's my reasoning. Firstly, a lot of people do think that this is William Afton. After all, the house we see matches the glimpses we get of it in FNAF 4, and the only other person we see speaking in yellow text in FNAF 6 is Afton during the Fruity Maze ending. Yellow text, yellow person, that could match up. However, I've seen most people believe that William is checking on Evan Afton and that this person watching TV is Michael. But let's think about that for a second. What would the hard day be for Evan? Just being bullied? He gets bullied every day. Is every day a hard day? Why would Michael suddenly start caring about Evan's well-being if he torments him every day? Two more things stick out to me as strange: the broken window and these seemingly random footprints that go or come from nowhere. Do we really think that Evan, this Evan, can break a window and run into the woods? And if so, who do these footprints belong to? Okay, so what makes me think that this is William's wife, and Michael is the one that runs away? Why do I think that? Well, Michael is seen to be nearing adulthood, if not already 18, and wears a muscle shirt a lot. This implies he's probably kind of strong and could probably break through a window to escape. If that's true, that place could be the unmarked grave in the woods we also see in this cutscene. Possibly Evan's grave, since Michael feels so much guilt about basically being the one to kill him. What about the footprints? They seem like an animatronic, but they seem like they just appeared, or even teleported. We know that William Afton couldn't be using the spring lock suit because the rain would have caused the springs to lock and kill him. We know it couldn't be Circus Baby because she wears shoes, not having 3 toes. Who would be appearing outside of Michael Afton's window almost randomly? Evan. He wants to come home. We see Golden Freddy, or at least a hallucination of him, teleport throughout this series. If Michael Afton is in bed one night, enwrapped by guilt over what happened to Evan, and sees the suit that killed him suddenly appear, then disappear out of his window, why wouldn't he do anything he could to chase after it? What about Mrs. Afton here? Well, look to security breach. In it, we see the Afton family sat around a table, with Evan and Elizabeth being represented by a headless staff bot and a staff bot styled to look like Circus Baby. While this could just be shorthand to refer to these children by very important events, this is specifically referring to them with how they died. Evan being bitten, and Elizabeth being killed by Circus Baby. They could have represented them in other ways. Have the Evan staff bot wear a black shirt with 2 stripes and be crying. Have the Elizabeth staff bot have the same outfit she wears in the minigame. But they chose their deaths. I think this is implying that there was at least a time where the family was just William, his wife, and Michael. Before the wife either divorced or died, we really don't know what happened to her. Although, I will mention in a cut voice line, it's cut so don't take it as gospel, the Mrs. Afton bot does say, "I want a divorce." So, possibly she left from divorce, again, we have no idea. And no, I don't think the childhood we hear from Vanessa in the retro CDs is accurate, because we hear later that the backstory is made up and she had a happy childhood, so it's a whole can of worms. So in this scene, Midnight Motorist, file name, later that night, we potentially see William Afton leaving from the night he kills Charlotte and then going to neurotically check on his son Michael, the only living son he still has. And that's the very same night that Michael runs away. After Charlotte is dead and Henry is out of the way, William begins to kill by hand to ensure no more accidental deaths. He kills the first batch of 5 at the Freddy Fazbear location, but then it closes down due to suspicions about the missing children. He then continues his spree at FNAF 2. While this is happening, Michael vows to stop his insane father. He goes to the FNAF 2 location but doesn't find him, instead being fired by examining the animatronics too closely. When Freddy Fazbear's reopens, Michael goes to find him there, but once again comes up with nothing and is fired for snooping. Both times, Michael gets arrested for tampering with the animatronics and foul odor. Now, most people say the foul odor is explained by the corpse thing, but if he's tampering with animatronics that have had bodies in them, he'd probably start to stink too. Soon after, when the restaurant closes down, William comes to collect. He needs more remnant for experiments, so he disassembles the FNAF 1 animatronics at the closed down restaurant. He takes those animatronics and melts them down to pure remnant infused metal, and injects them into the Funtime animatronics. However, these animatronics are erratic, most likely due to being mixed together, so William goes to collect his old Spring Bonnie suit to try and help tame the creations he's made. However, some of the spirits had still remained. They scare him into the suit, but due to moisture, it snaps shut, killing him inside. Sometime later, Michael goes to the sister location, does the plot there, and gets scooped. So there, the final order I can come up with: Evan's chomped, Lizzie's yoinked, Charlie's shanked, kids go missing again, Willie's snapped, and Michael scooped. At least, that's the theory we baked today. What do you guys think? I know this is a really big speculation on my end, but I think it gives us really narratively compelling reasons for the things that happened to have happened. And it gives us motivations to characters that up until now, we just kind of overlooked. And again, for the record, even though the FNAF 4 cutscenes depict Evan Afton, I think the FNAF 4 gameplay involves Michael Afton having the nightmares. I mentioned that briefly, but to further elaborate on it, I made a video here, so go check it out. As always, shout out to the best patrons, the Toasted Slices, Emberisk, Zenith, Tommy Woodyard, Isle, Stormachow, Raven Eris, Charlie Bean, and Lovey Puppy. And until next time, as always, stay toasty.